Sally there, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jim and welcome to the Sounds German review for the new Eisregen EP Satan liebt dich. Eisregen, of course, is a German dark metal band active since the mid-90s and infamous amongst self-proclaimed youth protectors due to their often explicit lyrics with sex, violence and sometimes even both of them mixed together. Eisregen was featured multiple times on this very channel already in the past, once with a review for their 2017 released album Fleischfilm, once with an analysis of a song they changed pre-release of the album, and once for taking part in blocking a German YouTuber's song analysis videos because they apparently didn't like what he had to say for some reason. If you care, you can find all three videos linked in the description below. Now, EPs, or I guess they officially call this a mini album for some reason, have become a bit of a standard after an album for Eisregen in the past few years, more specifically since their 2011 released album Rostrot. And their EPs have often been considered mixed bags, and I'd say this one here is absolutely no exception, with some strange and frankly puzzling decisions made here content-wise. And as per usual for an EP, I'll go through it track by track. The opening track is called Pfahlmondmörder, which, together with the name-giving title track of this EP, is one of the two high points of this disc for me. A short intro full of ambient noises and creepy whisperings by vocalist Roth before a mixture of harsh, thin electric guitars and thrashing drums kick in. Roth shows right from the get-go why he earned his nickname Bloodthroat with this gurgling, raspy screams and shouts while going with clean vocals for the hook. The keyboard gets to shine before the hook sets in, underlining the creepy atmosphere of what seems to be a werewolf-related story really nice. Certainly not a topic I necessarily expected, but Eisregen realized it incredibly well with their very own style here. The eponymous track Satan liebt dich feels probably the most like an old school Eisregen track and brings what I hoped I would find mostly on this disc. It's a slow-paced track with drums and piano notes and Roth's calm but still very raspy vocals telling the tale of a child turning to Satan who promises it company after its parents died. He manages to catch the sinister essence of Satan himself here just beautifully through his singing. The guitars kick in for the hook, accompanied by a wonderfully creepy synth line which just underlines the whole atmosphere of the track perfectly. Sadly, it only goes downhill from here on out. Onkel Fritze is about Fritz Hamann, a German serial killer from Hanover who was prosecuted to death in 1925. They certainly take some liberties with the historic accuracy here, picturing Hamann as someone who sold his victims meat as a butcher because he did actually sell meat after the First World War. This, however, was never proven. From a narrative standpoint, Eisregen goes all in on this one aspect though, which I guess is fair enough. This story feels like it was made for an Eisregen track, which, as they have proven before on this very disc, can still manage to create an eerie, horror-like atmosphere. But the composition is completely lackluster and basically unfitting for the story. You get drums dashing forward, mostly supported by the synths, and short guitar strums here and there. It just sounds like a dime a dozen metal song, really, showing absolutely no characteristics that you would expect from Eisregen, Roth's incisive vocals aside, of course. What follows is Menschenmetzger Fritz, which is just the previous song covered by the Transylvanian Beat Club, here listed as the Transylvanian Beef Club for the sake of the pun, and with different lyrics. I was actually surprised to see this side project of Eisregen member Jantit pop up again, because I think the Transylvanian Beat Club hasn't released anything in over a decade now. Music-wise, they put a bit of an harder edge on the track with, for example, heftier drums and production, but this is really not much of an improvement here, and neither are the more crassly worded lyrics that, for example, point out Fritz Hamann's homosexuality. For the most part, this version too focuses entirely on the cannibalism aspect. If they would have placed this track not directly after the original, the impression might have been slightly better, but why this track is even on the disc in the first place is just a mystery to me. For God Your Soul is a cover of the track For God Your Soul, For Me Your Flesh by Austrian death metal band Punch and Stench, with the original track being from 1990. The Eisregen cover has noticeably better production values, but in return lacks some of the absolutely insane guitar work the original track has to offer. Roth does a proper job of emulating the vocals of the original, but for the most part it's just a pretty straight-played cover version, and I personally think the original beats it in almost every aspect. In return, Martin Schirenk from Punch and Stench delivers the next track here, which is a cover version of Eisregen's track Mein Eichensarg. This cover is a crime and a sin against the original. After a short electric, very spacey intro which replaces the acoustic guitar intro of the original, you are being thrown into a pretty unimpressive death metal song that orients itself only on a bass level on the original. Washed out guitars shred along a drum set and you hear Schirenk yell the lyrics with his heavy Austrian accent somewhere in the background. The problem, or rather one of the problems, here is that the vocals are mixed so far into the background you can barely hear them. They just get drowned out by the instruments. And you might call me biased here because Mein Eichensarg is one of my favorite Eisregen tracks altogether, but this cover just completely lacks the atmosphere of the original. It's just this constant barrage of fast riffs and drumming. Gone are all the nuances in the original's composition or the presence Roth crafted with his vocals. It sounds like a guy with an electric guitar, a drum kit and a cheap headset just decided to cover a song in his living room while being totally wasted. This version should have never been made in the first place, let alone being sold for money, and it's somewhere on the level of these Falco meets German rap cover versions. It's just it's just absolutely horrible. The final track is 13 russische Krebsschweine, which is basically a medley of 4 Eisregen tracks. These are, in order of their appearance, 13, Futter für die Schweine, Meine tote russische Freundin, and Krebskolonie. I seriously think this is a prime example of Eisregen's kind of humor at work. See, 3 of their albums got indexed in Germany. The short version of what that means is it basically got an adults only rating and can't be sold in stores publicly anymore like any other album. From what we know, 3 of the 4 tracks of this medley were at least partially responsible for the decision of getting them indexed, the only exclusion here being 13. I mean, this is only a guess from my side, but I feel like Eisregen wanted to pull the legs of the aforementioned youth protectors a bit by putting all these tracks, or rather pieces of these tracks, together into one package. Being what it is, it's really not a bad medley, which has some neat transitions between the songs themselves. Recording quality and production has definitely been stepped up in comparison to the original recordings too. It made me wish they would have just re-recorded those 4 tracks and put those on the EP instead of the 4 prior tracks we got, but due to how our youth protection laws work, that would have meant this EP would have gotten indexed instantly, so I get why they didn't do it. But still, this medley gives a nice look into old Eisregen works, which are really worth checking out if you don't know them yet, and I guess for longtime fans, this closing track is a nice throwback too. So, as a conclusion, for the most part, this EP is just unnecessary at best. I would recommend the first 2 tracks and maybe the medley in the end, but everything in between I could have done completely without. I know EPs are typically the place for cover versions or remixes, but that doesn't mean they have to be mediocre at best. With the first 2 tracks, Eisregen proves they still have it in them to deliver their unique brand of dark metal, just dripping with atmosphere. But the rest of the disc doesn't show it. Grab the first 2 tracks through some sort of online distribution and give the rest of the EP a wide berth, because it's not worth your money and even less so your time. So I hope you enjoyed this review, and if you did, please leave a thumbs up on the video, and if you didn't like it, we have a button for that too. And if you have listened to this album, feel free to tell me in the comments what you thought about it. And if you want at least one weekly music review from an artist or band you probably never heard about before, just subscribe to the channel. You can also follow Sounds German on Facebook or Twitter. I do usually post daily new music videos on there from all kinds of artists. I hope to see you again next time. Have a nice day. Salida.